And this is NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with our own Poet Laureate, Rich Michelson. Let's turn the microphones over to Poet Laureate Rich Michelson.
All right, thank you. That tone was just about fitting for today's show. I've got with me Dean Young, who is reading at Smith College tonight, Weinstein Auditorium, Wright Hall. You really are going to want to be there. I did my homework and forgot the time, but I think it's 7 or 7:30. Please double check tonight, Weinstein Auditorium, Wright Hall. Dean Young is the 2014 Texas State Laureate. 11 books, 2 Pulitzer Prize nominations, American Academy of Arts and Letters, and Academy Award in Literature, which I hear is just like the other Academy Awards. It must have been very fancy. First of all, welcome, Dean.
Thank you.
What draws me to your work, frankly, when I get a magazine and I see your name is on it, I go to your poems first because they're fun to read. They're, the wild leaps of a logic. It's kind of like a pinball machine in some ways. You're all over the map. It comes together at the end. So my question to you is, how hard do you work at that, or does your mind really work that way? Are you that all over the place? Is it a natural progression?
I think he's asking you, how weird are you?
Yeah, that's
in a nice kind of way.
Yeah, I think my mind actually works that way when I sit down to write, because what I'm trying to find is some sort of energy connection. And that connection of energy often goes sideways or it goes backwards. Lightning comes up from the ground, after all. So energy isn't something we can really predict. And it's definitely not linear. So in terms of writing, what I'm trying to do is keep myself interesting and look for something, wait for something to emerge. So I follow whatever sound or association that happens while I'm sitting at the page.
All right, so usually on this show we chat for a while. I really get to know the poet a little bit, and then we have you read. But I want to give people, I'd like to start out with a poem. If you can read something that just to give a sense, because your work is really like no one's that I know. If you want to just read us a poem, give us a sense of what people are going to hear tonight.
Okay, let me just find something that's not too long. Scarecrow on Fire. We all think about suddenly disappearing. The train tracks lead there into the woods. Even in the financial district, wooden doors in alleyways. First, I want to put something small into your hand, a button or river stone or key, I don't know to what. I don't have that house anymore across from the graveyard and its black angel. What counts is a proper goodbye. My last winter in Iowa, there was always a ladybug or two in the kitchen for cheer, even when it was 10 below. We all feel suspended over a drop into nothingness. Once you get close enough, you see what one is stitching is a human heart. Another is vomiting wings. Hell, even now, I love life. Whenever you put your feet down on the floor in the morning, whatever the nightmare, its miracle or fantastic illusion, the solidity of the boards, the steadiness coming into the legs. Where did we get the idea when we were kids to rub dirt into the wound, or was that just in Pennsylvania? Maybe poems are made of breath. The way water, cajoled to boil, says, "This is my soul, freed."
That's beautiful. Tonight, Dean Young, 7:30. We have it confirmed at Wright Hall, Weinstein Auditorium. And, your work plays with language so thoroughly. Yet there is, reading the book, there is kind of like there's a serious undertone of, in a sense of morality of, thought, I find. But a question I have for you, the last few guests we've had on this show, people like Alpha Michael Weaver, Alicia Ostrica, Martina Spada, we talked about politics and poetry and what difference writing can make in the world. This is a political show in many ways. Your work, you feel that work really doesn't have a social edge, or?
I think that's fair to say. I'm interested in ephemera, and I think politics is ephemera. But what interests me most is, I think, the eternal questions, the trauma of being born, the fantastic and horrifying experiences of life, and the impending great event of our death, that perpetual mystery. I think one of the things that poetry is for, at least for me, is to negotiate those borders with both the inexpressible and the unknown. That's one of the great gifts of the imagination. And what's the big unknown? The big unknown, the event we prepare for our whole life, and we know no more going into it than we probably know going out of it is death. That seems to me, but that seems to me to be the major thematic arc of my work.
Well, then I have to ask you then, because you're talking from a very personal situation. You've had a heart transplant. You almost died. You really faced that. How has that changed your work? Has it changed your work? Are you writing now with a different mindset? Do you feel like, okay, this was a question that I asked, but now it's real and it's palpable? Is that changing your work?
It has changed my work in that it's delayed its completion for a number of years, because I was so sick for a while, and then recovery was difficult. But in terms of the event and the experience of that event, it didn't come as a surprise to me. I was diagnosed about 10 years before my heart completely failed, my original heart. It's strange to talk about one's second heart. Mm-hmm. It's even stranger than talking about one's second wife. And so I feel like that concern and that element, that subject matter, has always been in my work. Now it has a new twist, I suppose, because of the particularity, the strangeness of having a heart transplant, and what that means, that while I was waiting for a heart, knowing that I was waiting for somebody to die, and that his death would in fact be my wager for living longer than I would have lived, say, 20 years ago.
You're listening to Dean Young. This is NPR on WHMP, Northampton Poetry Radio. Tonight, Wright Hall, Weinstein Auditorium at 7:30. Dean's going to be reading from, well, you have a new book out, which is your selected poems. And
it's actually not that new. Okay. It's a new book, but almost all the poems are old, so it's kind of a strange thing.
And well, I'll tell you what's stranger, picking up that book and looking through it. I can't remember a selected poems that didn't have some sort of chronological order to it. You decided to go against that, which, kind of tradition, and the poems are in alphabetical order.
By title, right?
And it's hard to read. I mean, and there's something in us that wants to know, did he write this earlier on? Is this a recent poem? And I have to say, with your biography, there's a question, gee, did this poem come after the heart transplant, before the heart transplant? Why do I feel that way? Is that something you're hearing? And why did you decide to upset our expectations, which you're good at doing?
Because the main reason I did it is because I don't think that chronology is that important. And also, I couldn't really be true to it. The order of the poems in my books are not chronological. And often there'll be poems in books that follow that a book after one book that were actually written for the previous book and taken out for various reasons. So in terms of the chronology that my books present, that's false. But the real reason I didn't want, most of the books are in print. If somebody wants to find all that out, they can. But I wanted this. I wasn't really wild about doing a selected poem, but I was in the hospital when I did the selection, so it seemed like, why not? This is a way. If I'm going to go out, I might as well go out this way with this kind of sepulcher, and be in charge of it myself. But I wanted the book to have its own quality. And one of the things that I'm very happy about with ordering the poems in that way, or disordering them in that way, is they have different conversations with each other. There are aspects of my work that I think are consistent. I hope my work has developed in sophistication, but that wasn't a pressing need to me to present these poems as coming to, now we get the new poems. So all these poems have been leading up to it. I just wanted to step away from that, and I wanted to have the book to have a very different quality than selected poems often do.
Mm-hmm. It's always interesting. I think that's something that putting together a book, that people don't realize that poems read differently depending on who's next door to them. As a gallery owner, I think when we're hanging a show, where you put pieces makes a difference.
Context.
How it reads, and I find that as well within the books. I tend to write in series often, so poems really speak to each other. So did you discover anything new when you saw the poems in the selected poems?
Well, no, I don't think so. It's because I expected that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
When I put a regular book together, my ordering impulse is very, very haphazard. I don't. There's not a. I'm not a storyteller, nor am I a story writer. So that's not what I'm trying to do when I'm ordering poems. So out of disorder, there's always new connections, and that's one of the things I'm interested in poetry and art in general. How it presents possibilities for connections. Okay. So that's what happened.
Do we have time for one last poem to take us out?
Sure.
If you can read one more. Again, Dean Young, 7:30, Weinstein Auditorium, Wright Hall, tonight at Smith College. You'll want to be there. And
I'll try to
take
find
us out with
a love poem, so it'll be easier on our listeners.
we would appreciate that. It's kind of a tough morning. It really is. We should note that after Dean Young reads a poet, we take a short break, and then we will be back with Jim Hightower, the enormously important progressive voice of America.
And this is radio. We're just turning pages here. If you were at the reading tonight,
yes,
we'd have it down for sure.
The search. I'm probably just going to read new work tonight, because I will be able to read it instead of being surprised by. Well, I'll read this one. This is short. Music was my education. I thought I had a window seat, but it was middle all the way. I wasn't hurting anyone, just minding my own business, of which I had none, which makes me purer, easier to blend in with the cloud crowd, and the murmurs of lost love's name. Talk with a girl who knew a lot about invisible matters. Some philosophy had wrapped her. Sounded like harassment to me. No antidote for the anecdote. Then, in a dream, I realized my own beautiful darling was truly gone to me. Then it was lutes galore. We were over the sea by then, would be forever.
Dean Young, Smith College tonight, Weinstein Auditorium, 7:30. Thank you so much for being here. You're listening to Northampton Poetry Radio on WHMP, The Bill Newman Show.
And we'll be right back.